Hi everyone, this is Jose Burgos from Venezuela. I'm an English teacher and you probably read a little bit of my bio. It's kind of weird being here delivering a conference for you in front of the camera with no audience, but I'll try to do my best and I hope you enjoy the recording. I'm going to leave you with my contact right away in the beginning of this conference and also in the end of the conference so that if you want to just follow up with some questions or comments, I would really appreciate that, right? So let's start right away. And this conference name or title is Distance Teaching, Body Language in Distance Teaching. So give me a sec just to share my screen very quickly. And there you go. Okay, share screen over here. Awesome. This is the title of our presentation for today, Body Language in Distance Teaching. And I'm very thankful and honored to be here. This is my first time participating as a speaker in the International Conference for Teachers of English at the UPN. I graduated from the Pedagogical University of Venezuela, so this university in Honduras feels like my house. I always say that. I'm based in Tegucigalpa, by the way. So let me tell you a brief story on how I got interested into this topic, into body language. Turns out that as I grew up, the emotional input that I received from my family was not too strong. My mother was kind of an absent mother and my father just was not in the picture. So I didn't grow up with too many emotional inputs. And that made me socially awkward, especially when you're a teenager. Being socially awkward can kill you, right? So I started getting interested into behavioral psychology and into body language. And I started reading books on this topic. And personally, my life changed so much because I learned that the way people see me has a lot to do with the way I communicate. And communication, part of the communication, a huge part of this process, has to do with your body language. And that's more or less how I got interested into this topic. And from then and on, I just continued to perfect this knowledge by reading, by practicing, by teaching it also. And I've became just a huge fan of nonverbal communication topics. So we have two main topics to cover for this presentation. First, I want you to gain some awareness on the influence of nonverbal communication when it comes to distance teaching. And second, well, we will review some of the do's and don'ts of nonverbal communication when it comes to distance teaching. I love talking about this because everybody since the pandemic has been talking about applications, technology, developing different types of competencies related to how you deal with technology, and they have forgotten about the human part aspect of education. A lot of people I've seen just neglecting the entire human process, that it's an extremely important part of education, of the teaching process. So hope you can take advantage of this, and let's start right away. As I told you, here's my contact information in case you want to reach out with follow-up questions or comments. I'll strongly appreciate that. Before I start, I want to say also that teachers have been doing an amazing job during the pandemic all over the world, and I want to take some seconds to praise that, to appreciate that. I know that there are so many professionals working to, as they say, flatten the curve, saving lives in hospitals. But definitely, one of the key members of society that has worked so hard and helped this pandemic be less stressful and less problematic, troublesome for humankind are teachers. So thank you for that, teachers, and let it be known that so many people, even though they don't tell you this frequently, they are extremely grateful for the job you do, and me as a teacher and as a student, I'm one of them. So here's a picture of myself when I had some hair, probably 6 years ago. These pictures were online classes, online Spanish lessons that I taught, that I delivered with a company that I used to work for. And as you can see, my body language was always part of the class. I did have a board, and I did have some headsets like these ones that I'm using right now. But most importantly to me, students were able to see what I did with my hands, what I did with my body, what I did with my face. Here are some pictures also. The one on the left is me teaching, I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago here in Honduras. Well, it's the same. I use my hands a lot. I let my people see my body a lot. I let them see my face. And when it comes to distance teaching, it should be the same. And we will learn why is that. There are mainly 3 uses of nonverbal communication or body language in our daily communication. And I want to tell you that the difference between body language and nonverbal communication is that body language, it's just about obviously what you do with your body, hands, face. But nonverbal communication has to deal, also deals with your intonation, your speed, words you use, mostly things that are related to communication beyond the very words. So that means also that nonverbal communication also involves body language, intonation, and other aspects of communication that are not present or that have nothing to do directly with words, the words that we say. So in terms of the main uses of body language, we have 3 main uses of body language. We have that it is a conscious replacement for speech, number 1. Number 2, that it is used to reinforce speech. See what I did just unconsciously? Reinforce, reinforce speech. And number 3, as a mirror or betrayer of your mood. Take notes on that. Meaning that with your body language, you can either replace words, you can reinforce your words, or you can betray yourself or reflect, emphasize more how you feel. Can our bodies speak? Definitely. Definitely they can speak. And in distance teaching, it shouldn't be an exception. When you see somebody crossing their arms and their legs, that's a main sign of emotional withdrawal. When people are emotionally withdrawn, that means that they are not paying attention to what you say. They might be hearing what you say, but they might not be recording and remembering what you say. They are just not interested in your information or whatever you have to say. So definitely our bodies can speak. Let's do a quick exercise there where you are at home. So we have 8 faces. You might think like, this topic is so evident. What can I learn from this? What new thing can I learn from this? Well, let us have a small quiz now to see how good we are with our ability to analyze body language. So the first one to the left in the first row, I want you to think of a word that describes that emotion or that expression. A word that describes that expression. 3, 2, 1. That it's neutral. That person is just neutral there. Let's go with the second one, the first row. Think of a word that matches that expression. 3, 2, 1. Happiness, happy. Let's think of adjectives. I think with adjectives it's easier. Third face, first row. Think of a word that matches that expression. 3, 2, 1. Surprised. Yeah, you got it. Surprised. The last one is hard. Believe me, the last one is hard. Think of a word. 3, 2, 1. That is contempt. It's like kind of squeezing a little bit your lips to the side, like saying, it's not convincing to me. I have some questions about it. I have some doubts. I'm not too into that. That's contempt. The first one in the row below. 3, 2, 1. And the emotion is sad. It's quite easy. Hope you're getting it. Sad. Okay, next ones. The next one might be a little bit tricky to you. An expression for that, a word for that expression is 3, 2, 1. That is the expression of fear. You raise your eyebrows, you open your eyes, your mouth opens a little bit also, depending on how scared you are, and your nostrils, the skin that covers your nostrils, get raised a little bit, lift up. They get lifted up by your muscles a little bit. The next one, the third one in the second row, in the row below, a word that describes that expression is 3, 2, 1. Disgust. Disgust. And the last one, a word that describes that expression is 3, 2, 1. Hate. I hope you got at least 6 out of 8. If you want to know more about body language overall, I would recommend you to look for this book and in this website, lenguajecorporal.org. It has more than 100 tips that will allow you to understand more body language. Again, we are developing some awareness before we get into this topic, and here you have some facts. 55% of the messages that we convey to other people are transmitted through body language. 55% of the message that that people get from us comes from body language. That means movements with our hands, with our bodies, with our feet, even our feet, and also the facial expressions. 38% of the message that people get from us comes from the tone of our voices. 38%, that's huge. And then only 7% approximately comes from the very words we're using. So let's say that you say 100 words. 100 words to somebody. Out of those 100 words, only 7% will be understood by what the very words mean, by the meaning of the very words. The rest of the words, 93 of these words, would be understood better because of how you move and also because your intonation or the tone of your voice. It's kind of amazing. Also, 90% of the choices that we make, the decisions that we make, are based on emotions. And body language is a powerful trigger of emotions. So imagine how important this is for helping students have the best behaviors or the most elevated behaviors that will contribute to their learning. Our body language can actually influence in the decisions they make. Okay. According to other studies, from 65%, 95% of the messages that we communicate in our daily lives, about that percentage is communicated non-verbally, so without words. And there are so many more facts to learn about body language. This is an amazing topic. And let's see how we connect body language science to teaching, or in this case, distance teaching. Some people might argue but Jose, I have some movements and some behaviors, and I sometimes use things, um, use certain movements with my body that have nothing to do with something that someone can ever study. Meaning, like, how do you know that this works for everybody? How do you know that body language is actually working for people in China, in Russia, in the United States, in Latin America? How do you know that we are all, as we say in Spanish, the saying, we're all caught by the same scissors? How do you know that? Well, here's the thing. You have two people here and they have three things in common. First thing, they were competing on something. Second thing, they won. We can see that they won, right? They are celebrating. And third, they are blind by birth. So they have never been able to see anything since the very moment they were conceived and born. How come somebody who has never seen anything in their life, when they win something and they celebrate, they do this V posture? How come does that happen? So the reason why that happens is because body language is integrated in our DNA, if you will. When I use that word DNA, it's integrated in in the most intimate aspect of our constitutions as human beings. We can't avoid being affected by thousands of years of evolution and modification through culture, through experiences of our past, um, of our ancestors, and so on. So what I mean is that first, body language, it's super important because it conveys so much meaning in our conversations. But second, you can't avoid being influenced or affected by your DNA and by someone else's body language. That's huge. Now, connecting this topic with teaching, how do we know that this is so relevant for distance teaching? We know it's relevant for teaching in a classroom, but how do we know that this is so relevant for distance teaching? Well, we might just shoot some statistics, but I'd rather give you some research, recent research. This is an article from July that was released by the Graduate School of Education of Harvard University. You can see the link below if you want to read it all. And they were analyzing what makes a great teacher when it comes to distance teaching. All right. So they ended up with the conclusion that what makes a great teacher when it comes to distance teaching, this was July, all right? This was July 2020. First is content knowledge, so that you really know what you're talking about. Second, it is that you have pedagogical knowledge, meaning that you know how to make other people learn. You know how to make other people learn. Yes, that's what I meant. So you can make other people learn. You are able to deliver content and make it in a way that it's understandable, approachable, accessible, learnable, if you will. Third is cultural awareness, because when we deal with distance teaching, we are literally entering in the houses of our students. We're literally becoming part of their family somehow. They open the doors to us of their own homes, and then you listen to the cats and the dogs barking, you listen to the neighbor, you listen to the person in the street selling plantain. You listen to everything. You might listen to the arguments from coming from the family from other rooms. And being cultural aware makes you understand these challenges and these issues. It makes you understand that the fact that you are comfortable at home teaching a class doesn't mean that your students are comfortable at home receiving the class or learning. Also understanding that people come from different backgrounds, different families, and everything works kind of different for everybody. And if we're different at a local level, imagine how different we are at a national level or at an international level. And the fourth skill or ability or thing that makes a teacher a great teacher when it comes to distance teaching, it's self-awareness. What is self-awareness? The ability to see, to know, to realize, to understand myself from who I am, what I do, how I move, what I wear, how I speak, what I say. That's self-awareness. And definitely self-awareness is huge because it makes you realize when you are making mistakes, whether you're talking too fast, too slow, whether your social presence is completely gone and you're not there in the classroom anymore and people lost you, and so many other things are related to how we know that what we're doing is effective, right? And to conclude with this small article, excellent online teaching has nothing to do with being able to create breakout rooms in Zoom or creating digital documents. It's all based in instruction, and it's all based on the decisions we make to make our teaching more effective. And one of those decisions, I want to start coming down now to the point, to the topic. One of those decisions is essentially when to open up our cameras and when to use our body language to make the class more humane. There are some recommendations from this article that I wanted to leave you with, and some of these recommendations that are related to becoming an excellent teacher or achieving excellence in distance teaching is, see this. This is from Harvard Graduate School of Education. The first one, nurture connections and build relationship with students. The first recommendation that the Graduate School of Education from Harvard University is telling teachers around the world after their research: nurture connections and build relationships with students. In the past, when we were in classrooms, students would arrive 5 minutes earlier or more, and they would just hang out and speak and talk. And if we were in the classroom, they would come to us and ask us questions. Teacher, tell me, couldn't understand this. Can you please, sorry to bother you, could you please, or teacher, how was your day? Where are you from? How was traffic for you coming down to university, college, school, whatever? And we would also probably stay 5 minutes later, and we would meet in recess to talk, to speak, to share, to build connections. That is gone, ladies and gentlemen. That is gone when it comes to distance teaching, because we are so focused on trying to figure out how to use technology to deliver content. And learning, it's more than content, and it's more than pedagogical knowledge. It's about building human connections also, and that's super important. Second recommendation, leave space and time for students to connect and socialize with peers. Have you done that in your recent online lessons? If you haven't, now it's time for that. Invite students to share something from where they are located. Can be, well, after the hurricane, a tree fell on my father's car. I'm just making a random joke here. Or, I'm sorry, well, you've been hearing to my cat all over the class, so let me introduce you to my cat. Here it is. Have them share something from the environment where they are. Manage time for individual check-ins and giving feedback. So try to meet with your students after the class, before the class, 5 minutes before the class ends. So all of these recommendations, realize that they have little to do with technology or with devices, apps, digital competence. They have to do mostly with the human aspect of education. What makes a teacher a great teacher? Well, you have heard probably in Spanish the word facilitador, and in English the facilitator. Here are some of the characteristics. I will not go through all of them, because from now on I want to give you some principles of this body language in distance teaching, and I want to give you also some principles, some do's and don'ts when it comes to distance teaching. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Probably the music in the background will stop as well. Here, awesome. So I hope that this first part of this session has helped you develop more awareness on body language. That was my mission. And now let's revise. Let's review the do's and the don'ts. But before we do the do's and the don'ts, let me share with you some principles of body language or nonverbal communication in distance teaching. So here I have my notes. One of the principles is that nonverbal communication, it's a complement of communication itself. And education, it's a communication process. It's how we transmit and share knowledge. And for that process, there's communication involved all over the place, whether it is written communication, spoken communication, or nonverbal communication. So if we take off the equation, or if we take from the equation nonverbal communication, do you remember the percentage of richness of content, of information that students stop receiving? So pay attention to that. Nonverbal communication, it's a complement of communication, and teaching, it's mostly a communication process. Also, nonverbal communication help us reinforce or disapprove behaviors. When we were in the classroom, in a classroom environment, if a student was too noisy and we didn't want to say anything because we were just explaining something, we'll probably pass next to the student and probably knock at his desk or her desk, tuck, 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 or probably just gently put our hand in their shoulders like this. And that was enough for the student to realize that, oh, I have to be a little bit more quiet. Teacher is explaining something. That is one example in the classroom of how nonverbal communication can either reinforce or disapprove behaviors. When I say disapprove, probably that's not the word. Probably the word is inhibit or hinder certain behaviors. So we want to promote some behaviors and we want to discourage some others. That's probably the word that I was looking for. So in the classroom, in the online classroom, when students have the opportunity to look at us, to see our faces, to see our hands, to see our chests, they also have the opportunity to get more information from us. And that information can either reinforce what they are already doing, or we can discourage what they are already doing. That's another principle. And the third principle that I wanted to share with you is that nonverbal communication, and to me this is the most important. If I could summarize and tell you, hey, stop everything you're doing and pay attention to that, to this, to one important point, it would be this one. This one. Nonverbal communication, it's absolutely vital, crucial, paramount for social presence. Why is this so relevant? Because social presence, as long as with other things like food, like drugs, like other things that really stimulate our bodies, that are, of course, so much more dangerous, social presence help us produce dopamine. And dopamine has been discovered that it influences so much in memory, learning, concentration, overall feelings of wellness. So if we are able to keep a nice and neat social presence, despite of the fact that we are online, we will have our students feeling better. And if they feel better, they will learn better. Social presence needs of body language. It craves for, it requires body language. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this small video game called SIM. It was a virtual reality sort of game in which you would have a character, and that character would build a family, build a house, go to work, buy stuff for their house. It's, well, basically a virtual life. I don't know why people would love that so much if you can do that in real life. I think because in the game it was faster. So, but the point is that when the person, when your character was feeling sad, some of the things that you would do to make it feel better is taking a shower, having some lunch, watching something fun, a comedy, going outside, playing, or speaking to a friend. When the heart bar, the bar of the heart was kind of low, you would just go to a friend's house, talk, and then the bar would go up, and you would feel so much better. Same thing happens with our students. The reason why the amount of dropouts of online learning is so high is because students have little or no chance to interact with others. And social presence is important for you to feel better. And another principle that what I wanted to share with you, and notice that I'm not using any presentation because I wanted you to really pay attention to what I'm saying in this part. Another principle is that mm, human beings love new things. We love social media so much, not only because of the social reward that they give you when somebody likes our pictures or comments what we say, but also because there is always something new to see. There's something repeated in social media unless it is a viral meme, a viral comment, a viral new. Otherwise, every single minute you have something new. And we like to scroll down and see something new all the way around. So, one of the reasons why nonverbal communication and body language is so crucial for distance teaching is because human brains love new things. They love novelty. They love what's new. Our brains are always looking for the new thing to do. And there are many philosophies and techniques and meditation techniques and psychological techniques that help us just slow down and enjoy your meal, enjoy your company, enjoy the present moment. But here's the thing, when you eliminate from the equation body language, you are also making it so much more boring for the student to pay attention to. Because see, it's hard for me to make the same movements all the time. My brain is always doing something with my hands. It's always doing something with my face. I don't control them most of the time. I do control them when I want to. But most of the time, this is just very spontaneous. And this movement, it's also the new thing, the new thing, the new thing. And our students' brain, they see, oh, something new, something new, something new, and they are less bored. Yeah. So that's a fourth principle. Now let's go with the do's and the don'ts. I probably would focus mostly on the don'ts. And I wanted to let it be known that there are different levels of education. We have preschool education, primary education, secondary education, and so on. All right. So each one of these levels of education requires something additional. For instance, preschool education is just impossible to be absolutely online because education in that level, it's about developing skills. More than developing knowledge and language is skills on how you move your fingers, how you respect patterns, how you create habits, how you move your legs and are able to walk around, how you respect social norms. And that is just at this point in history, it's impossible to do 100% online as far as I'm concerned. If you guys know something, shoot the comments of what you've discovered, but it's impossible. But anyways, you can implement some hacks, some techniques, some recommendations of nonverbal communication that I'm giving you and will continue to give you, mostly at any level of education, but definitely you need to adapt your lessons according to the levels of your students or your students level. So the first don't, and I want you to pay attention to this because many teachers do this. Many teachers do this. I would say most of the teachers do this. The first don't is don't become a talking nose. Don't become a talking nose. What does that mean? That means that I'm always like this, teaching this way, and my hands disappear, everything else disappear, and I suddenly became to my students a talking nose. Probably it's even closer what some of the teachers do. They put the cameras right in front of the face, their laptops right in front of the face, and they killed their entire body language, and they become a talking nose, and students focus more on the imperfections of your face rather than the content that you are trying to teach. That's one don't. The second don't, it's to be too repetitive, like not to change something in your environment or from yourself. For instance, in this time, in this time, I have a small uh, painting over here. I have a black sweater. I'm behind a wall. But for next conference, I probably can do something different. And those different things, depending on the level of your students, could also be related to elements that you use in your virtual classroom. For instance, let's say that you want to talk about culture. Let's say you want to talk about culture, then you include in your class a cultural element like um, this beautiful hat from Santa Barbara. So that means that when I wear this hat, I am going to talk about culture in my class. Da, 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 and I share the information, and my students love it because, oh, teacher did something different. We didn't expect that hat coming from nowhere. So they get used to the hat, and it's fun. And they know that when the hat appears, it's because you are going to deal with culture or history, probably. Let's also say that I have a different hat, just brought a bunch of hats. And when I wear this hat, this means that I'm going to talk about phonetics. When I wear this hat, that means that the class will focus on phonics, for instance, in phonics, because this is a French hat, and I don't know, French phonetics is beautiful and people like. It's just a way to relate what I teach with an element that I use. Or let's suppose that when I'm going to ask my students some questions, when I want to ask my students some questions, I am going to wear this detective hat. This detective hat, and I'm going to wear these glasses. And, and here is time for questions. Question number one, Emily, answer this question. So this is something that it's silly, that it's kind of simple, but just by adding a new element, you avoid being too repetitive. If you see the same teacher during the entire year, school year, in front of the same wall, being the same, it will end up being a little bit boring. But if you add something innovative, something different, and different element to your class, you can make it fun. You can make it more exciting. And remember, this is like the more you are exposed to something, you develop something called tolerance. That means that you are not affected by that anymore. In the first day of class, everybody's excited because a new teacher, a new year, something new. And that excitement just goes down because the excitement just drops down because it's the same teacher, it's the same school. So it's quite important that we take into consideration that wise advice, and that is that human brain craves for novelty, for things that are new. So try to go different every other week and make your class, make yourself a little bit different. The third um, the third mistake and the third don't that I usually find is when teachers are too academic. They are even teaching first graders, second graders, third graders, whatever, primary students, and they become so academic because they feel exposed to the parents. Now our parents are also part of the class. They might be in the classroom and they are there, and we want to be like really formal, and therefore we make a mistake, which is being extremely formal or extremely academic. For instance, I can tell you, all right, guys, we're going to make an exercise to practice pronunciation. We're going to practice diphthongs. Okay, repeat after me. Diphthongs. Do you know what a diphthong is? Correct. So the exercise goes like this. I'm going to show you some objects, and I will pronounce some objects, and you will pronounce the objects after me. And your task consists on realizing what is the object missing after the second row of presentation. Is that clear? So, bunch of instructions, very academic, very formal. I can do the same exercise like this. For instance, like, all right, guys, you know what a diphthong is? If you don't worry. I'm just going to tell you the answer right now so you don't have to think, making your life easier. So a diphthong is a combination of two vowels. So you know what the vowels are already. And the diphthong that we are practicing for this class is O diphthong. Oh, as when it hurts. Oh, have you heard and have you seen The Simpsons? Oh, well, that's the diphthong that I wanted to practice. Say it out loud. Oh, now like The Simpson. Oh, all right, good job. So I'm going to show you some objects, all right? And be careful because you have a mission, and I'm going to give you a huge prize to the first person who answers my question. So be careful. Repeat after me. Remote. Remote. Good job. Repeat after me. Sticky note. Sticky note. Okay. Repeat after me. Headphones. Headphones. Repeat after me. Rope. Rope. Okay, good job. Awesome. I'm going to show you the objects. Okay, first person to say what object is missing. 3, 2, 1, shoot. Got it. Yes, you got it. You got it. Headphones. Those are the ones missing. So the prize that I'm going to give you, I promise to give you a prize. The prize is a huge, huge, huge clap. Congratulations. So I just make a silly exercise to practice vowel sounds out of nowhere. One in a million of exercises that we can do. First one was too academic, not engagement at all, no engagement at all. The second one, I was playing with my students, I was involving my students, I was using you pronouns all the time, and I make it a little bit more interesting by challenging them, by telling them to pay attention, by being more friendly. In other words, just being less academic. So the third don't is being too academic. And last but not least is being, I call it the absolute you. The absolute you. I have my phone ringing, and that can happen during online learning. All right. So the fourth don't is the you, the absolute you. Just being absolute all the time. By absolute, I mean that either you present your camera during the entire class, and you are probably like this, or you present some slides during the entire class, and it becomes very monotonous. It becomes, the word that I use for that is absolute. So one single element takes the main role in the entire class. That element can be some slides that you created, a game, website, or even your camera. So you have to vary from time to time. An example that I can give you is like, as I did in the beginning, I chatted with you for a while. using my camera, then I presented something, then I came back, share my camera, and in the end, I'm gonna share with you again a presentation. That makes it less monotonous, makes it less absolute. And the overall recommendation for this is that you use your camera at least 2 times during your class, 2 times. One in the beginning. And the first thing that they see is you, okay? Is yourself. They can see you, they can chat with you, they can see your expressions, they can see what you're wearing, they can see everything. And the other moment, it's in the end of the class, because that will help the student have as main takeaway you as a teacher, and not a random cold gray PowerPoint presentation or whatever you use, exercise or website or game. It's so important that the first thing that they see in class is their teacher, and the last thing that they see before they leave, it's the teacher. And it's, if in between you want to use your camera, that would be fantastic. And if before and after the class you want to open the space for students to chat with you or among themselves, you can tell them, all right guys, I'm leaving the class. Okay, you want to see them, you will see that I'm leaving, but you can stay in this room and you can chat. That's fantastic, that's great. That's amazing. That promotes social presence, that makes them feel part of the class, that makes them feel that they got back to school, which is what many of us are looking forward to. So having said that, I share with you so far some content, some knowledge to make you aware of body language, some theory, some statistics, some studies. I share with you 4 principles. So one is that nonverbal communication is part of the communication. The second is that nonverbal communication reinforces the message. No, sorry, nonverbal communication reinforces behavior or not. The third principle is that it's crucial, vital for social presence. And the fourth principle is that human beings love the novelty, what's new. So those are the 4 principles, and the 4 don'ts. One, the you knows. Two, the you repetitive. Three, the you academic. And fourth, the absolute you, the absolute presentation, the absolute element. Having said that, let me share my screen one more time with you. Probably you will hear some music in the background now. Want to close with telling you that teaching is the greatest act of optimism, because we believe that our actions can change someone else's life. And because of that very idea, I believe it's the reason why we get up in the morning, grade, plan, correct assignments, deal with the administrative monster of education. And we see our students. We see our students every day. And even though we don't want to be there, or even though we are tired, even though we would rather be somewhere else, we are there because we are responsible and because we believe that our actions can truly change someone's life. So that's why I agree with Colleen when stated teaching is the greatest act of optimism. And I hope you continue doing the amazing job that you have been doing so far. Never let anybody question what you've been doing. You've been doing magic with nothing. You've been creating systems, creating a new system out of thin air. And that's so valuable, and I really appreciate that. Usually, in the end of my conferences, I have people interacting. I try to make it fun. I try to make it relevant. I don't want to speak and speak and speak and just throw out of the window information. But in this presentation that is recorded, I can't do that. So that's why I'm leaving you again with my contact information, so you can reach out, tell me I like it, I didn't like it, I got this question, you mispronounced this word, give me some tips, come visit my school, let's arrange a presentation for my school. I'd love to do that. All right. And I look forward for you to having a blessed week and great days to come. Thank you so much. Contact information. And I can't leave this session without the references, because this is not my knowledge. This might be some of my experience, but these are the references from which I gathered this information for you guys. Have a great day again. Thank you for watching and stay blessed. Stay safe.